Today's podcast is brought to you by AlleyRepair.com. Don't leave your skee-ball machines lying around collecting dust in the basement. Let AlleyRepair.com bring those machines back to life. High-quality workmanship for your skee-ball playing needs. Contact AlleyRepair.com today. Hello, everyone, and welcome to this episode of the Fro Life Wrestling Podcast. In this episode, we're going to discuss kind of a total mishmash of things heading into Royal Rumble weekend. I want to review the things that went down on Raw and on SmackDown, a few things that are in the dirt sheets for the week, and just go through a few different things. I want to apologize to our loyal listeners, the people out there who tune in for each podcast episode. This is actually a big one. This is episode number 10 for me. And for people who watch but listen to podcasts all the time, I can't tell you how much fun it is for me to be able to do these for you guys, and I really appreciate the people who come back every episode and hear all the nonsense I have to say, and I'm going to try the best I can to keep you guys up to speed on all the stuff in the world of wrestling. For those of you who tune into all my podcasts, you know I do one for football, I do one for education for people who are planning to go to college at some point. I'm somebody who can help you get there. So all in all, this will be my 20th podcast of all types, and I really want to thank the people who tune into all of them, because without you guys tuning in, there's really no reason for me to be doing this, and I've been getting some great messages from people and great feedback, and it means the world to me, so I really appreciate everything that people have been saying, and I really hope that I can keep up the quality of the episodes that people seem to like. So that being said, I'll get off all the mushy stuff, and we'll move right into some of the news, starting with Lana. I'm going to start with Lana for a reason. There was an article out this week that was letting people know what to expect on Total Divas this week, and that Lana was going to have some pre-wedding jitters about Rusev and running into an ex-boyfriend and all this kind of stuff. Look, I got a real problem with these things being in the news in general, and here's why. The episode that aired this week was recorded last summer. Lana and Rusev have been married since like August, September. I can't even remember when. It's been that long. So for anybody who's like the casual fan who only tunes in once in a blue moon to wrestling, but who's more of a Total Divas fanatic, this might be news to them. But to anybody who's been watching WWE programming for the last 6 months, we knew that Lana got married months ago. So running an episode like this just shows how horribly behind their episodes are to real life. Heck, we've seen the wedding episode played out in a feud way back in like October. So it's kind of ridiculous that this hits the dirt sheets as being like state-of-the-art news. Whatever. This stuff happened months ago. So for everybody who tunes into certain wrestling news websites, I almost feel bad for you guys having to see stories like that pop in there, because it's so pointless. It takes up too much time. It's even taking up too much time on my podcast. So I'm going to move past that real quick. We're at the 3-minute mark, and I've already spent too much time on Lana. I'm going to move on to Shane Douglas. I really appreciated there was an interview out with Shane Douglas. I saw it posted on multiple websites, including one of the best websites I've seen for pro wrestling news, which is WrestleZone.com. I saw that they had an interview up with Shane Douglas where he talked about the lack of skill and the lack of quality in promos nowadays in wrestling, and why that's such a big deal. Because, you got to understand something. He came out during the tail end of the territorial days, where you could go and you can get to a local territory that had syndication in their marketplace. So unlike today's independent scene, I don't know if some people understand this, but a lot of the independents, because they don't have a television contract with anybody and they don't syndicate the way the regional promotions used to, people don't get the opportunity to stand in front of a microphone very often, and they don't get a chance to really hone their craft before they make a huge leap into the main picture of like a World Wrestling Entertainment or even the TNA Wrestling or a Ring of Honor. They don't get that experience that they used to get. I can remember watching old footage of like Tony Atlas cutting a promo in Georgia, and he was terrible. By the time he gets to World Wrestling Entertainment, he can cut a promo. And it isn't something that's gone away. Even nowadays, somebody who's as seasoned as AJ Styles. AJ Styles, the first couple weeks he was in WWE, I actually thought his promos were god-awful. And he's a world-traveled veteran, but they don't get the same experience in front of the mic. And now in the last year, AJ's come a long way. He's a fantastic interview. He's a great promo or great whatever. His segments are always entertaining. But it took a long time to get there, and I think the only reason he's done so well is he's pretty much excelled at everything he's done in the wrestling world, so I don't think he had that much of a learning curve to make up. Shane Douglas was talking about when you went out in his day, you lived the part, you felt the part, you felt the character. It wasn't somebody feeding you some line in the back on some script where somebody told you word for word what to say. If that's ever been more obvious, this past Monday on Raw with the whole Goldberg thing, that was god-awful. Fumbling your words twice because you're so worried about saying exactly what somebody told you to say. That's stupid. That's not legitimate product. That's not organic. That doesn't feel real. It feels scripted. And when you fumble over your words like he did on Monday night, it makes it look terrible. I love what Shane Douglas was saying. He loved the franchise character. He lived the franchise character when he was in his promos. People didn't tell him what all to say. They might give him ideas and direction and whatnot, but at the end of the day, a lot of it was completely up to him. And that makes it more organic and it makes it more real. So I really appreciate that. Speaking of comments from people who are not in the wrestling limelight anymore, I'm going to move on to Dave Bautista and him talking about how he got screwed over the last time he was in World Wrestling Entertainment, which I think most fans who are true fans of the sport would agree with. He was used poorly. The angle with him in the Royal Rumble and trying to put him and Orton in the main event at Mania at a time when the people were just clamoring for Daniel Bryan, it just made no sense, none whatsoever. And so to hear him come out and be very vocal, very critical of how horrible it was to work for the company at that time and things like that, that's shocking, and it may slam the door in his face if he ever wants to go back and do another match. But one of the more interesting parts of the interview was the fact that he said that Stephanie and Triple H didn't want him to come back, and Triple H is supposed to be his boy, kind of messed up. He mentioned that at one point he was supposed to put Daniel Bryan over again, and he thought it was pointless since he already did that at WrestleMania. He wanted to build up the whole Evolution versus the Shield thing, and then as soon as they got to that crescendo of really building the Shield, they broke them all up. And he's like, well, what's going on here? You guys are wasting an opportunity. You could just tell from the way he spoke, and I won't give a direct quote because I don't have it in front of me, but the basic gist was even he understood that they were missing an opportunity with the Shield. They were breaking them up too soon. And he actually stayed a month longer than he had to try to help with the product and do more for the product and deliver in his matches, and it just was not appreciated. He was going to return for SummerSlam, went right in time to promote the Guardians of the Galaxy, and WWE pretty much turned her back on that opportunity, which is completely stupid and ridiculous. You got one of the biggest movie franchises established that summer, and yes, it was an unknown commodity. We really didn't know if it was going to be a great film or a bad film, but dude, seriously, we've got stuff like the train wreck and whatever this insane movie is coming out now with the penguins. They're supposed to be like the Undertaker and everything. If we're going to promote that stuff, why wouldn't you promote a Marvel movie, which I don't think there's been one Marvel movie that's come out that hasn't been a blockbuster. Even a flopping Marvel movie would have done better than half the movies that WWE promotes. Anyways, we'll move on past Batista. We'll go on to Finn Balor. It's been reported this week that Finn Balor is being sent to the doctors to get checked out to hopefully be cleared to return to the ring. And I really cannot describe how much I would love to see that at the Royal Rumble. I don't know if for me, because I'm a huge AJ Styles fan, I have been since the mid-90s when he went into, I guess I want to say late 90s, I shouldn't say late 90s when he showed up in NWA Wildside. It was on some local promotional syndication here in this area where I live, and I didn't even know who AJ Styles was. I just thought his moves were amazing. And then a little later when he went into that air raid nonsense in WCW, didn't really matter where he was. I've liked AJ Styles from the beginning. That being said, his walking out last year at the Royal Rumble would be nothing like Finn Balor in his demon form showing up for the Royal Rumble. I think that would really pop the crowd in one of those historic ways. So I'm hoping that this doctor checkout is leading to a surprise entrant, and the timing is perfect. His injury was supposed to be 4 to 6 months. It's been 5. It's time for him to come back and make a huge impact, and he could really establish himself in time for a big main event match at WrestleMania if he comes back at the Rumble. Speaking of AJ Styles, also in the news, Kevin Owens had a huge comment out there that it addressed he and AJ Styles' ability to come into WWE under almost a very different set of circumstances than most of the talent. They didn't have to spend a ton of time in developmental. And it's a little different because AJ Styles came directly to the main roster. Kevin Owens did spend some time in NXT, but neither one of them certainly didn't have to wait 2 years, 3 years. And Samoa Joe, for the last 2 years, has been being wasted down in NXT. I'm not saying he hasn't put on good matches, but Samoa Joe is the kind of guy who could put on insane matches with Brock Lesnar. If he already did that match, he could have put on an insane opportunity with Goldberg or whoever, Seth Rollins, you name it, he could have worked with him. Roman Reigns and Joe would be a great opportunity. And they've had him floundering there for 2 years. instead of maximizing his potential. So there's some validity to what Kevin Owens is saying about how the two of them got to kind of skip over a lot of that nonsense. And I don't know if that was because they needed stars on Raw, or if they're just oblivious to the fact that they have so much more of that talent down there that should have come up the same way. I mean, like, you remember back in like the 80s and 90s, if somebody jumped from one company to another, it was a big deal on TV. And it didn't matter if it was Waylon Mercy or Barry Windham's headhunter, or whatever the heck is the Widowmaker, or whatever they called him for a little while there. Those silly characters would show up, and even that was exciting because you got to see somebody new on TV. They missed an opportunity here. So interesting that he had those comments. I'm going to move on to reviewing something about 205 Live, because this week's 205 Live is a perfect example of why the brand is failing. That brand is failing. And that is that you get done watching a killer SmackDown episode with, The Miz and Ambrose headlining the show. And after that, you got to convince people to stick around and watch people who weigh 200 pounds fly around the ring. The show needs to be before SmackDown, or it needs to go away. I wouldn't be opposed to them making an entire brand out of the Cruiserweights and making it a WWE Network only thing, just because there's so much talent there. I mean, this week, Tony Nese had this cool segment where he lost a match to TJ Perkins and then he totally obliterated him after the match. That's good stuff, but there's nobody left in the arena to see it. The Brian Kendrick was on the show and he did a really nice job too, but there's nobody to see it. You've got a big angle you're building with Neville, and he uses his Iron Maiden submission hold on Cedric Alexander to put him away, but that's a big angle they're building on for the Rumble, and no one saw it, because by then they're at the end of the program and everybody's left the arena and nobody cares to stick around and watch 205 Live. And let's face it, Neville's actually somewhat of a decent attraction. Cedric Alexander, I think, is an underrated attraction. He's a great cruiserweight, and it'd be nice to see these guys in a more marketable scenario. I wouldn't be opposed if they took the brand to WWE Network exclusively, to them creating Cruiserweight Tag Team Champions again, or something of that nature, to make it its own. They don't need to, we have like 14 segments with these guys anymore on the two big shows, and we don't need all that. What we really need is them to have either their own space or less exposure, especially when you're trying to push a women's revolution. You can't do both. You can't expose the women 3 or 4 times a show and the cruiserweights 3 or 4 times a show and still have enough time for the main eventers. Which leads to one of my other issues that I have this week, is the fact that it's been 2 weeks we haven't seen America Alpha on TV. They win the tag team titles from Bray Wyatt and Randy Orton. They defeat 2 of the biggest stars in the company, and then you bury them behind not even being in television for 2 weeks. Now look, and we'll get to the coverage of SmackDown later, but there was a Battle Royal this week. They weren't even in that. Why aren't your World Tag Team Champions a big part of your show? It's ridiculous. No, we got to give a few more minutes to Divas Revolution and Nikki Bella and Natalya. Like, who cares? Put the Tag Team Champions out there if you really believe in them. I don't need any more of the women. Heck, you got people like Cara Maria from MTV complaining about the Divas. She said something this week about, on Twitter, I believe it was, about all these WWE Divas dressing like strippers on a pole. Like, really? Have you watched the Divas lately? First off, all the humanitarian stuff they do is over the top. These people do so much more than just act as performers in the ring. But on top of all that, if you look at people like Bayley, Bayley is not the stripper model. She's not. She's the average girl. I think that's part of her allure to the fans. She's the huggable girl, and she's the average girl, and the little girls in the crowd love her, and it's not because she looks like a pinup model. She's quite the opposite. Okay? How do you explain Nia Jax? I don't think anybody on this planet wants to see somebody on a stripper pole that looks like Nia Jax. Nia Jax is a killer talent in the ring. She's not a stripper. And the other girls, the Sasha Bankses, the Charlottes, Becky Lynch, those people, they are putting on quality matches, the likes of which women's wrestling has never seen, going all the way back to Moolah and before. It's never been this good. So it's completely disrespectful of this Cara Maria to complain about the Divas and talk about what they look like. How about you get off their appearance and start looking at their actual talent? Because there are some really talented ladies out there right now. Give them the credit for putting on main event quality matches. Get off their appearance. Half of them are dressed more conservative now than they ever were before. Natalya dresses pretty good every week. She's not out there showing everything off. She's covering herself up and making it so my 11-year-old son can watch the show and I don't have to worry about what he's thinking. I appreciate the fact that it's a Divas Revolution in some ways because I can enjoy watching the show with my kids. I don't have to make my son turn his head or leave the room because somebody wants to go out there and be half nude. We don't need like Stacy the Cat Miller taking her top off like they did back in the 90s. We don't need that anymore. We need to see wrestling. On the topic of things I don't need to see ever again, I saw that Netflix acquired the rights to the documentary about the Gawker versus Hulk Hogan trial. Has this been beaten to death enough? Like, seriously, do we really need to hear more about Hulk Hogan and him exposing himself on a videotape? I really just don't care. I don't care to hear about Hulk Hogan and his junk, okay? Get off it. Please don't put that on Netflix. My kids, if they turn on, like, I don't use Netflix. I use Amazon Prime, but if my kids turn that on and see something like that, I'm going to be livid. They don't need to see that. I'm going to get off this. We're going to get to the last couple of segments before we get into the Raw and Smackdown recaps. First one being Royal Rumble related. The latest odds are out. Goldberg is now the odds-on favorite to win with a 3-1 odds. After him, there's a tie between Braun Strowman and The Undertaker. Then, surprisingly, comes Randy Orton and then Finn Balor. And I'll tell you, I heard a rumor that what the plan may be is to have Randy Orton win the Rumble and then have Bray Wyatt take the championship from AJ Styles at Elimination Chamber, setting up Randy Orton versus Bray Wyatt at WrestleMania. I have never thought of that scenario. I'm okay with that scenario, and I really would appreciate Bray Wyatt getting a world title run. So if that happens, more power to them. I think that's great booking, and that's not something I could say about WWE very often. But on the topic of the Royal Rumble, the guy I've talked the most about in the last couple episodes, Kenny Omega, he put out a great quote. I'm going to read the quote to you. I did write down. It said, "The most I can say right now, and this may disappoint some people, if some of you guys are subscribers to the network and you're looking forward to something happening or not happening on the 29th, I'm not sure if I can pull a rabbit out of the hat by that date. That's all I can say for now, but that doesn't mean it's impossible. I'm not saying anything. That might be asking too much at this point in time. That's literally the most news I've given anyone up to this point. If I'm in it, though, I'm pretty sure I'm winning the whole thing. So, ... end quote. Thank you, Kenny Omega, for fueling the fire of speculation and making someone like me, who is a big fan of Kenny Omega's, very excited for Sunday night, because this Royal Rumble could go in any of 15 different directions, and I would not have a problem with any of them. This is the first year I can remember since the Royal Rumble started with Hacksaw Duggan winning that I don't even care who wins. I just want to see the match. I'm sure they'll find a way to put programs together for Mania no matter who comes out on top, and I really don't care at this point. This is the most interest I've had in a Rumble in years, and I always love the Rumble. It's a great pay-per-view every year, but this one's going to be exciting. It's not one of these things where we know Daniel Bryan's got to win, or we know Batista's got to win, or we know that Triple H is going to win so he can face Roman Reigns and blah, blah, blah. I'm so glad we have no idea. Moving on, let's recap Raw and wrap up the show with recapping SmackDown. Raw, let's go through this quickly. Snorefest and Borefest with Reigns' in-ring segment to start the show. It continued with more snores and yawns with Cesaro, Sheamus, Gallows, and Anderson doing their same spot they've been doing for weeks. I have no love at all for the Bayley and Charlotte interviews. They might as well have been standing in front of the live crowd. Why record that boring nonsense? This wonderful fanatic fan of Charlotte's and this and that. Who cares? Just put him in the ring. It's supposed to be a Divas Revolution. Get him out there and let him wrestle. Ric Flair, when he was world champion 16 times, he wrestled everywhere and every week. And even if it was some bum somewhere, he still wrestled all the time. I don't remember the last time we saw Charlotte actually wrestle any kind of real competition. It'd be nice if you're going to have a Divas Revolution to actually make the Divas a spotlight on the show. So, whatever. I don't need to see these stupid backstage vignettes with them talking about how much respect or lack of they have for each other. Rollins and Sami Zayn, I love the match. I hate the stipulation, because the stipulation makes not one shred of sense to anybody watching that show. Let me explain. Sami Zayn wants in the Rumble. The only way you can make it in, Sami Zayn, is if you fight Seth Rollins tonight and you take his spot. Why? Only a few segments later, you're going to see people like Jinder Mahal and Rusev and Enzo and Cass and Titus O'Neil and every other freaking person on the roster come out and talk about how they're entering themselves in the match. Well, then why can't Sami Zayn enter himself in a match? Why is Seth Rollins out of the match? Why can't Seth Rollins walk out after he loses the match to Sami Zayn and go, I'm entering myself back in the Royal Rumble? It doesn't make any booking sense. It doesn't make any viewing sense. Who the heck writes this stuff? I have no idea, but they have no clue what they're doing if they think that makes sense. I've said enough about those two already because my blood's boiling over the stupidity of that angle. I love the match. Like I said, killer match, great ending. I'm cool with that, but the rest of it, nonsense. There was the Mustafa Ali coming out party for their Cruiserweight division. I love it. He's clearly a super talented guy, and I'm glad they're trying to push, their 17th Cruiserweight at the same time. Whatever. The New Day, the Enzo and Cass thing, when New Day came out, and then they hit the music for Enzo and Cass, I thought, oh my gosh, finally, some kind of, not that the matches never happen, but something fresh. And then within moments, you have Rusev and Mahal, and you have the whole little flirtation with making Lana wrestle, and then Strowman coming out, which as soon as you saw Strowman, you know he was going to win the match because he's getting such a monster push right now. So that was worthless. You have Reigns beat Jericho and Owens by DQ with the whole interference in the cage and the U.S. title rematch. That was another pointless and boring and ridiculous segment. The Nia Jax part, whoever Ray Lynn is, she got her clock cleaned by Nia Jax in like however many seconds just to see Sasha Banks come down and get involved and waffle the snot out of Nia Jax with her crutches. I actually liked that angle. I thought that was something we didn't expect. So that was kind of cool. If there's one good part about the Women's Revolution, it's that part on Monday night. Rich Swann, Noah Dar, this ridiculous thing with Alicia Fox. I could never see that again. It'll be too soon. Just put her with somebody. Make her baby. If you can't, she's been in the company for years. Put her with somebody. Make her baby doll of 2017. Just leave her as somebody's eye candy on the side and give her a role and just stop shifting her. This is stupid. They've played the whole like she's crazy card before, so get off it. And then the big part of the night, I hated Raw this week, but the big part of the night was when Goldberg came out, screwed up his lines twice, but did finally get his promo out there, and he get interrupted by Paul Heyman coming out. Brock Lesnar comes out. You get that really cool, like, enticing him to the ring. It looks like Brock's not going to step into the ring. It looks like he's going to walk away. Then he gets in the ring. They're nose to nose, and I actually thought to myself, he got in the ring. Like, why isn't Goldberg leveling this guy? Totally didn't expect to hear the bells gong and for The Undertaker to come into the ring. That was the absolute money shot of the evening. Seeing the three of them in the ring, staring at each other. And for the first time in a very long time, I'm going to say WWE booked this one perfectly. They all looked at each other at different times and nobody hit anybody. I remember Roddy Piper saying years ago in some interview that, he would purposely not wrestle for free. People would see him do stuff and they'd want to see the fight and they'd want to see him get physical, and then he wouldn't. It would make people mad, so then they'd pay more money to see him fight for real at the big shows. That's what I felt like this was. They purposely didn't let them hit each other so that could be set up for the future. I can't wait for the Rumble to see that. SmackDown, I'm going to recap really quickly. AJ Styles calling out John Cena. Awesome to see Cena almost going back to his thugonomics character. I enjoyed that quite a bit. The rest of it, whatever. Orton and Harper, I like their chemistry a ton. I really do. I love the angle with Bray Wyatt giving Sister Abigail to Harper at the end of the match. It really leaves a cloud of question over what's going to happen. The Mickie James part with Alexa Bliss and Becky Lynch coming out, it's all right, I guess. At least they got physical, unlike Charlotte. So at least their women's champion's trying to do something. It's good to see Mickie James back in the company. I think she's underappreciated with her impact over the years in women's wrestling anyway. So I hope she gets what's coming to her, because she's a great talent. They have the Battle Royal with Mojo Rawley coming out on top. When you don't even have the tag team champions in that Battle Royal, it kind of makes it just whatever. It's eye candy for the show, I guess. I don't know. Some odd match that nobody cares all that much about who wins, because there was nobody in the match that mattered. When I saw Mojo Rawley win, I'm actually happy about that, because I feel like that guy's gotten a Raw deal for a long time now, because his tag team partner gets hurt. His tag team partner got the Intercontinental match win last year at WrestleMania. Like, he's always like playing second fiddle, and now this was an opportunity for him to earn his spot in the Rumble, and maybe they'll do something with him, because they need one more mid-carder, because, people like Apollo Crews aren't enough. Speaking of, you had Kalisto lose to Ziggler and Apollo Crews come out. I hope that leads to something solid for Crews, because the guy's clearly insanely talented, but he gets almost no television time. So hopefully this is a springboard to something better. There was the Natty and Nikki moment. I could go the rest of my life and not see that, and I'd be fine. They've done it for like the last who knows how many weeks. just get it done. Like, have them wrestle, get it over with, move on to a new feud. I'm going through this so fast because I really want to get to the Ambrose and Miz. Great lumberjack match. Love the outcome. But the part of the match that meant the most to me was at the end when Ambrose went for the pin and you saw Baron Corbin come into the ring and break up the pin. Because I would love to see Ambrose and Corbin in a feud over the Intercontinental title, eventually leading to Corbin getting the Intercontinental title, if you ask me. Because I think he does have a lot of potential, even though I don't like his personality at all. I think he's got a ton of potential. The match was solid, and I think it puts Miz in position to really get a main event push at some point soon, which he so badly deserves after all he's done this past year with the product. So hopefully that'll lead to something good. And as far as comparing the two, I am so much bigger fan of what happened on SmackDown than Raw this week, with the exception of that last 30 seconds on Raw. That took the cake for the week. But otherwise, top to bottom, I guess between the Battle Royal and the AJ Styles John Cena moments and the Miz Ambrose thing, that pretty much stole it for the week. So that's our review of Raw and SmackDown for a week, and that's all the time we have for this episode. But check back with us in episode 11, where we're going to cover all the happenings in the world of wrestling coming out of the Royal Rumble. We'll talk about results and things like that, and all the behind-the-scenes information. Special thanks go out to bensound.com and purpleplanet.com for producing all of our music and sound effects used throughout today's show. Today's podcast was sponsored in part by Beazle Games. Bringing a new friend to family game night is easy with sketchy people. Showcase your artistic side in this new game from Beazle Games and bring some fun and excitement back to family game night. Go to www.thegamecrafter.com/sketchypeople to pick up your copy today. To the U.S. News and World Report Best Colleges 2017, available at Amazon.com and Barnes & Noble right now. To AlleyRepair.com, contact Alley Repair today for servicing of all your classic skee-ball, pinball, and arcade needs. And to A&B Education of Lansdale, Pennsylvania, bringing intercultural education to talented students from around the world. We want to thank you for listening to today's podcast, and we encourage you to go to our website at www.frolifeplanning.com to learn more about what Mr. Fro can do for you. Remember, Fro Life educational planning is for today, for tomorrow, and for life with Fro Life. I'm Fred Froelich, better known as Mr. Fro, and I want to thank you for taking a few moments with me today, and I look forward to talking about the Rumble, all the results, and all the other things in our next podcast. But as I said at the beginning of the show, thank you to everybody who's tuned in for the first 10 wrestling episodes and for the first 20 podcasts in general that we put out there. I hope you enjoy it, and hopefully I can bring you more and more of those in the near future. Till then, take care, everybody.